Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Q&A live session. My name is Kristiina Paju, and I am from the UBC Sustainable Cities Commission. I work as a project officer, and I have been involved in the UBC CDP cooperation since 2017. And with me, I have Étienne, and I'll let him introduce himself in a moment, but I would like to also quickly note that this session will be recorded. So I hope that it's okay with every one of you who are joining in, and that you can also please post questions to Étienne, and we'll address them soon enough. Thank you. And the screen is yours, Étienne.
Yeah, hello everyone. Hello from Berlin, actually. Working at CDP as a cities engagement manager. My role is to help and support cities and municipalities, anyone working in the climate department, environmental department of municipalities to start their disclosure on the so-called CDP ICLE unified reporting system that I represent today. So probably most of you, but maybe not all of you, have received already emails from CDP, maybe from me. Maybe we have had some conversation individually with some of you. So anyone feel welcome to this session. I will try to answer your question.
All right, thank you, Étienne. And now I'm back on the live screen. I would like to congratulate CDP on this report, and maybe we can start off by discussing some of the findings from the report. What would you like to highlight?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a global report, not focusing on Europe, not focusing on the Baltic cities, but still providing interesting data. The report is based on the data of 812 cities worldwide, which have reported to us last year in 2020. And we have a variety of cities. It goes from towns from 10,000 inhabitants to the biggest capital cities in the world. So data reflects also the diversity of the participants in the disclosure. But I would say, and okay, just if you want to find the report online, it's on the CDP Cities webpage, the homepage, and the report is called so Cities on the Route to 2030, Building a Zero Emissions Resilient Planet for All. And it's really accessible. This is not a very text-heavy report, but we try to provide some nice chart and key facts, quite accessible for any reader, and some maps as well, so where you can identify which cities have participated last year. Well, some of the key findings of this report, as you may know, and this is not from the report, but cities represent up to 70% of the global emissions worldwide. So they have a vital role to play in the fight against climate change. So we usually say that we must reduce global emissions by 45% by 2030, and even reach net zero by 2050 if we are to build a zero emission and safe, resilient planet for all. So that's where we are going to. And what we learn from the report is, for example, that it's also not new, but buildings, transport, energy, and waste are the 4 key areas that have the greatest potential for reducing emissions in cities. And now the key finding from the report is that only 17% of the reporting cities are actually taking action in all 4 areas: buildings, transport, energy, and waste, which means that some may have action in 3 areas, in 2, or only 1, but having actions in 4 areas, all 4 at the same time, is only the case of 17%. So it's a minority of cities still. Yeah, so that's the first key finding. A second key finding, I would say, is that a huge majority of cities worldwide, 93%, actually report facing already climate hazards like extreme heat, rainstorm, drought, etc. We are not surprised from this figure. You know, not every city has made a risk and vulnerability assessment. But even if the cities hasn't, it's easy for them to identify these hazards from the past and to, you know, to start planning them. So, by the way, every city can report their risk and vulnerability assessment on our platform, if because that's part of the questionnaire actually. And yeah, if they have a climate adaptation plan in addition to a climate mitigation plan, again, cities are welcome to report it every year.
Okay, that's good to know. So
actually, in total, just to name a few, 1 out of 2 cities out of these 812 have a climate action plan, so a plan which has both mitigation and adaptation component. So 49% to be exact. So, well, the 2 findings out of it is that the positive one is, first of all, is that even if you don't have a climate action plan, you can participate and report on CDP. It's not a precondition. And it's all, in a way, it shows that your city is already aware of the climate urgency. So even without a plan, you can take action already. Well, the second finding, of course, is that we are still far from from the 100% worldwide. But you know, in UBC, it's a bit different in the Baltic Sea area.
Okay, so can you elaborate on that? What's the situation in the Baltic Sea region and with the UBC cities?
Yeah, actually, I think the best is perhaps to share some slides. So that our viewers currently see your slides, Christina. If I may switch to mine, so I'm gonna take action now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you see my slides?
Yeah, now I'm going live with them.
Okay, so I'm gonna go full screen for your comfort. Well, first of all, I wanted to highlight the cities which are member of the UBC and which contributed to this report in a way last year, and because they have simply participated in the 2020 disclosure cycle. So thank you to all of you. As you can see, we have capital cities and small municipalities. So I just want to say that the questionnaire is adapted to any size of cities and towns. And now your question actually, what do we learn? So on the top row, you see data worldwide, which you will also find in this report. Like I said, 49% of cities have a climate action plan worldwide, but it's much higher in the UBC areas. So you have
double.
83% of them of the was it 20? Let me. It's 19 cities out of
23.
23. Thank you, Christina. So yeah, in bracket I have put the exact numbers because sometimes it's more you know, more relevant than the percentage. But anyway, in UBC it's more than in Europe, and in Europe it's more than in the rest of the world, as you can see. The next finding is the city having a citywide emission reduction target. So a bit surprising that this score is not higher, and not only higher in the world, but higher in Europe and also higher in the UBC region. So yeah, please don't hesitate to contact us and check if you intend to set a target in your plan, outside of your plan. What should be this target? What is expected? What is realistic? Which target, for example, is expected from the Covenant of Mayors? As you may know, Covenant of Mayors has renewed the commitment this year. What target is expected as part of the Race to Zero initiative? And many more. Yeah, so feel free to do it. That's actually the only stat where UBC is slightly behind the rest of Europe, you can see.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But we can discuss this further.
Yeah.
As well. Why is that?
Exactly. Why is that? I don't know. Honestly, I haven't investigated. Maybe the participant in this call can tell us. But might be that some cities in the UBC areas have, are already in the next phase, which is action, and not in the goal setting phase anymore. They may have, starting to take action even before setting goals, which in a way it's okay, because in the end we will simply measure the result based on the actions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so on the third column, this is the diagnosis, in a way, the inventory of emission. So you see here that this is a very common practice in Europe and in the UBC to have an emission inventory covering at least CO2 as a GHG. Sometimes cities have an inventory of more than just one gas. Usually they have 3 if they have more than one. Okay. The other GHG, and it's quite rare that they go beyond 3, that they just measure more than 3. Yeah. Actually, you can measure up to 6 or 7 different types of GHG, which is pretty rare. But having at least one, you see 78% of the UBC cities have an inventory covering at least CO2. And of course, they report it to us on our platform. And then emission reduction action. So this is the stat where obviously see that you have 18 UBC cities taking action to reduce emission, but only 15 have a target. So okay. That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. They are already starting to take action. And the goal setting is perhaps for some secondary. Action is more important.
That's true.
Maybe
that might be the reason.
Yeah.
We'll have the first question as well. Can I quickly?
Yeah. I'm blind because I'm showing my screen. Yeah. So feel free to tell it me to give it to me.
We'll have a question from Frederick, and he's asking that it will be interesting to read about the differences in the degree of sustainable waste management and handling of household waste among the different countries, regions, and cities of the UBC. For example, between Sweden and Scandinavia, with, for example, Poland and the 3 Baltic cities, including Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg. I think Baltic states.
Okay, on waste. Waste is indeed one of the 14 sections of our questionnaire, but not the most extensive one, which means that we do not collect, currently, we do not collect so much data from cities. Well, the reason is that we have introduced this chapter only recently, and we don't want to, add too much burden on cities when disclosing, because, in the preceding chapters, they have disclosed their inventory, their emission reduction target and actions, their adaptation targets and actions. And when it comes to waste, we actually have, I think, 2 or 3 questions only, and most of these questions are qualitative. So it's like describe your activities and actions within your city. So we can still do comparison. And I invite you to write me after this live stream to have the data to compare. But we are working on it, which means that in the future, it's very likely that we will extend this waste sector of the questionnaire in order to have more data, for sure.
Thank you for the response to this question, and thank you for Frederick for asking that. And you're more than welcome to post any other questions.
Yeah.
Questions to Étienne as well. But to come back to the report.
Actually, Christina, if we may, maybe we can also share some data on the adaptation.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Because we have seen emission reduction, so mitigation. So 2 data here, key data, how many cities have a climate adaptation plan? When we say climate adaptation plan, it should not necessarily be a separate plan. It can be the climate action plan, having a chapter or, at least one section for adaptation. Adaptation action. So we consider a climate adaptation plan, any form of plan. But so worldwide it's only 57%. In Europe it's much more, 76%, and in UBC that's the average. Like in Europe, a bit less, only 17 cities out of 23. Yeah, it's a bit normal, I would say, because historically cities have started to make their climate action plan only covering emission reduction. So probably the first version of their plan is still only covering emission, and the second version, the new plans that some cities currently are developing, now in the majority covers also adaptation. So we expect that in the next 5 years, almost all climate action plans will cover also adaptation. But it's a process which takes time, because the municipality should first be aware of it, develop, get some resources, perhaps some help of consultants, some metrics, set targets, and decide action. So it may take, it may take time, especially if the current mayor has not been sensitized to these issues, and then you expect the next one to be more aware of this. But anyway, having adaptation action again happens without having a plan necessarily. You see, 81% already take action. And in UBC it's 87%, so the big majority of them. And to conclude with the key findings, so on the left hand side you see top 5 mitigation actions in Europe and in UBC regions, and the top 5 on the right hand side adaptation actions in Europe and in the UBC as well. No big difference if we just focus on the emission reduction first of all. Energy efficiency retrofit measures comes on the top 1 in both areas. Then you have further energy related actions. So like I said, energy and transport are among the top areas where you can reduce emission. What is missing here maybe is like indeed buildings, or actually buildings is already including in the retrofit measure. So actually it's only waste which is missing here clearly from the top 5. So which echoes the questions of the participants. Indeed, waste should be an emerging field now for cities, and also in our questionnaire. So we should start gathering more data. Yeah, and regarding adaptation, so for adaptation, we can really classify adaptation actions as in two types. You have the soft and the hard. The soft is like mapping or doing some, some legal policy related actions, like, well, always necessary, like flood mapping, incorporating climate change into long-term planning document, and also some education or setting an early warning and evacuation system. This is okay, this is needed, but you also need to tackle the real roots and the real cause. And for example, tree planting, creation of green space is considered indeed to be more hard action that cities are more and more doing. That's great. I mean, that's also visible in the UBC areas. You see number 5, hazard-resistant infrastructure design and construction. So I think this is really where change is happening. But it's logic, because it's having soft action is chronologically always what you do first, and it's also what costs the least money. So it's quite kind of logical that we see that today in 2020, 2021, these actions taking place. In 10 years, I bet that we will have more hard action on the top 5.
Might be the case. We can't now see the action slide. I think it popped away. We can see the climate adaptation plan slide. But that is true. That is very interesting to kind of see what kind of action cities are taking, and whether they are on the soft side or on the hardest.
Like I said, if you want more info on this report, here's the link. And yeah, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, Christina, and perhaps we could some more direct exchange and questions.
All right. I'm going to change the layout now, just you here, but let's have a discussion based on that as well a bit more. So one element in the report that the public-private partnerships among the cities, and the highlighted need for more of that kind of actions that cities could take together with companies and other stakeholders. So how have you noticed in CDP that what kind of actions cities are taking to ensure those partnerships?
Yeah, this is on page 13 of the report, by the way. Well, the data shows that 3 every 4 cities, 76% of cities are already working with businesses on sustainable projects, or plan to do so in the next 2 years. So this is the raw data, but I suspect that it's actually more, and that cities have just underreported this data. Just why? Because in our questionnaire, public-private partnership is a separate section, and cities can add as many projects as they want, but some cities might just skip this part. If you go back to my previous slide, you see that there was top 5 mitigations actions, top 5 adaptation actions, soft, hard. None of these actions can be implemented without the support of the private sector, without cooperation on the ground with the private sector. And I'm not speaking of consultant or advisors. I'm also speaking of really the concrete implementers, so the ones able to deliver a map, the ones able to deliver an evacuation system, able to develop or to build infrastructure and equipment for the municipalities. So I really suspect that it's much more. And the private sector is also actually, we should not not forget that it's actually also composed of the investors. So cities are really in need of money to support all these climate-related projects. Again, in the report, you will see some few stats on that, but yeah, looking also for the exact numbers. Yeah, yeah, I don't have it here, but actually it's yeah, it's a majority of cities from memory that are still in search of money from the private sector for their projects.
Yeah. So to go on with this one, it's a bit related to my question regarding the emissions inventories. And in the report, it states that 7.5% of the cities who reported in 2020, they have a consumption-based emission inventory in place. So that is an inventory to track the emissions from the production of goods and services made and consumed within their boundaries. So do you happen to have any insights that how easy or difficult it has been for the cities to ensure those partnerships with the private companies, for example, to get the data from the private sector so that they can build these inventories?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You know, this is only a minority of cities which are aware that scope 3 emission can be measured, can be integrated into an inventory, and it's only a minority of cities that report consumption-based scope 3 emission inventory to us, 7.5, as you said. But we at CDP want this number to increase, of course, and provide some guidance and resources to cities to start doing this scope 3 inventory. Just want to tell cities that if you do scope 3, it will not replace your scope 1 inventory. That will still be in the report anyway. So it's just adding some data, and we don't really ask you the full detail of the scope 3 emissions inventory if you also already do the scope 1. But what I want to say is C40, you know, the network of C40 cities has published a guidance on how to do a consumption-based emission inventory. I think this is still, for us, C40 is a partner, but even if it was not, it's still for us the resource on how to do a consumption-based inventory. So if you are interested in this document, feel free to ask me. I think for the ones which are in contact with CDP already, they have received it per email recently. That was one of the resources I've shared. Yeah, it's not easy, and it might be that you need a consultant, you need some help, external help. But you can also take inspiration from the cities that are already starting doing it. I think that's also the approach to check how Amsterdam, I'm starting doing it, how other cities in Europe or outside Europe have started doing it.
All right, thank you for these guiding words to our cities on how they can start this emissions inventory, and that's very valuable information that you just gave us.
To complete my answer, of course, you know, there is a psychological effect behind that. Cities are taking action to reduce their scope 1 emission, and they can see how they do that. So it's emission happening within the boundaries, within their boundaries. But, you know, scope 3, it's like including your airport, for example, because all your inhabitants potentially use this airport. So it will be including in the scope 3, it will be including consumption based, not speaking of, you know, all the goods that you import from China or elsewhere in the world that are also, you know, emitting. So as a result of that, your scope 3 emission might look really terrible. And you may,
No worries.
compared to a scope 1, it may be really bad news, but I mean, you have to go through this step. Yeah, to tackle it, you have to start measuring.
Exactly. That is one of the key things to convey here, that everybody starts from somewhere and nobody has a perfect system in place at the first time they are doing something. So you have to just have the courage to start.
Majority of cities reporting with us do not have their airport on their territories. So that's a key fact. And so it's not including in the inventory most of the case. I don't know for Helsinki, I don't know for Stockholm, if it's in another municipality.
Yeah, because it's like Helsinki Vantaa, so over here, so I'm not sure, maybe it goes under Vantaa instead of Helsinki. So that is a very interesting question, because airports can be seen as one of those where the emissions can be counted as well. But what would you tell to a UBC city following us right now, and they are still thinking whether to start the disclosure process this year or not? What would you say to them based on the global report and based on the discussion that we've had so far?
I would say, the deadline is 29th of July. So it's only 49 days, if I'm correct. So you might be stuck by the deadline, but don't be afraid of it. I mean, the CDP reporting does not ask you to be complete on your response. So you can select which questions you want to answer. And I think as a first year disclosure, that's the good strategy. You go through the questionnaire, you check which areas of the questionnaire you can answer because you have data at hand, and you start doing that. Next year, when we will open again the questionnaire, you will find your data of 2021, just like you just wrote them, and you can extend the questionnaire, improve your data, update it, etc. So it's step by step.
All right. And what can a city expect after their very first time submission of the data to the system? What happens after the deadline?
Well, if they submit before the 29th of July, they will get a score, a CDP score, A, B, C, or D, which will remain private to the cities or only to the team which has reported to us. Based on this score, which will be published around November, the city you can contact us, CDP, you can contact me and have a feedback. So like a 1 hour call where we will go through your response and see why you happen to have a B or C or C minus, D, or even an A, why not? So that you can improve your data, you can improve your climate leadership the following year. So I heavily invite every city to do or to ask this feedback call with us, which can take place anytime between November and March or April the following year. If the city happens to get an A, which is the case of many UBC cities, or has been the case already, then this city will benefit from, I would say, a good media coverage, like the city of Turku last year, which has been invited to our CDP Europe Awards ceremony together with the mayors of Athens, the mayors of Paris, and even Chancellor Merkel. So it's not it's not just a small regional coverage, it's an international media coverage, and we publish the A-list cities, so it's visible to anyone in the world.
Wonderful. That should be a pretty good goal to strive for, to get the A's. But also, like, I would like to stress to our cities following as well that even if the score is lower for the first time, I think that shouldn't be something that you should be ashamed of. Like, that's because I think, like you said, it's just an overview of that moment based on the data that has been available at that moment. So I think you touched the point there that to continue improving and reporting and go on with this journey, and don't get discouraged by the feedback at first.
Absolutely. Again, here there is another psychological effect with the score. There are different scenarios. If a city receive a score which is lower than the expectations or lower than the previous year, there might be different reasons. First of all, please understand that the CDP scoring is not only a score of your climate performance. It's first of all a score of your climate transparency. So the level of completeness of data that you report with us. To make it very schematical, from D to B, it's a matter of completeness of data. And we also measure, of course, your goal settings, so your targets, and your actions. So we have actually 3 components, but goal settings and actions really matters in the score A and A-. So deception regarding the score should not happen, because actually, it's based on your data completion, and from the beginning how complete you were when you've submitted to us. You don't know. I mean, if you disclose for the first time, you can still also ask us before the 29th of July. And if you have really understood the question or misunderstood some question, we call this service the response check. It's free of charge, but you should ask us no later than the 25th of June, please, so that we can have time to review your response and also time for you to edit it before the submissions on the 29th. Yeah, and of course, and to answer your question, Christina, cities can improve and will improve from year to year, which is the purpose of the annual disclosure of the cycle, which is for us annual. And it's very common that cities improve their score. And we have even seen city from D to B or from D to A within 1 or 2 years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's been quite an improvement. But yeah, in order to do that, you need to start from somewhere. So, and I think another question I think might be interesting to address here is that the disclosure, should it be done publicly or privately, or how are cities doing it? Have you seen a tendency to go report or disclose privately more than publicly? Or what is the difference between those two?
Well, we heavily recommend to disclose publicly to cities because that's the purpose of, data transparency, of climate transparency, of climate disclosure. Yeah, so if you will anyway get a score, but if you don't disclose publicly your data, so your response will not be disclosed publicly on our so-called open data portal. So you will not be integrated in the calculations, in the reports, everything where we draw lessons from the data, and where anyone, academics, student, decision makers, associations, NGOs, other municipalities, the regional authorities, national authorities can really check and analyze the data that will be out of this scope. So it should be better to really choose the public mode.
Okay, that's good to know, because here at UBC we are also preparing the annual report based on the data that our cities have submitted to CDP, and sometimes we have had this challenge, like when cities have been disclosing privately, then we cannot just access that here as a UBC either. So that will be really helpful to UBC if you also consider reporting or disclosing publicly. That will make our work easier as well, so we don't have to bother you all the time with those questions that can you please give us permission to use your data for our report.
There are also some situations where the city cannot choose a private mode. For example, if the cities choose to report to the Covenant of Mayors through the CDP report, it should be public then.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good to know.
Some other situations like that, depending on your options. So, you know, these opt-in initiatives, which are offered to the cities on their dashboard. So the dashboard is the first page they see when they connect after having logged in on our platform. If you don't have your logged in data, just ask me, by the way, or Christina, and she will send me your request. On the dashboard, you see up to this year, it's a bit exceptional, 11 opt-ins initiatives that you can select. This is optional, but if your city is a member of the Covenant of Mayors, for example, this one is then not really optional. You have to make at least every 2 years a report to the Covenant of Mayors. So select Covenant, and then once you're in the questionnaire, you can only submit publicly.
Okay, when we come back to those initiatives, that have you noticed that what are the most popular of those smaller initiatives that are available? For example, the World Wildlife Fund's one and the one by ICLEI. Are cities actively joining them, or how can you address this?
Yeah, it's a bit hard at the moment. Cities, I'm aware of that. Cities are, you know, increasingly requested to commit, to make pledges, to take part of, to some initiatives. So we at CDP, we do not ask you to do that. We are just the one-stop platform where you can report against these initiatives if you choose so. The WWF One Planet City Challenge, or OPCC, is a friendly competition, which indeed is based on some key data that you will report in the questionnaire. For example, your targets, emission reduction targets, or adaptations. So it will not ask you additional burden, because these are anyway questions asked in the questionnaire. But it's a friendly competition, like I said, so there will be national winners and international winners of this competition. I'm happy to provide more information on that, or you just connect on your dashboard and you will see WWF One Planet City Challenge. Another one, or two other ones, because they are linked the one to another. This is the Cities Race to Zero and Cities Race to Resilience. You understand there is one for adaptation, for mitigation, and the other one for adaptation. Both are campaigns of the UNFCCC, so the United Nations. So this is the new campaign this year, and we really encourage cities to take part in that. Again, here will not require you too much reporting burden, but you will have to commit to some target settings, so to be climate neutral by 2040, if I remember right. So it has to be based on the political decision, of course, of your municipalities. But if this decision has already been made, for example, if it's part of your climate action plan, then I don't see a reason for not joining the Race to Zero or Race to Resilience. And again, you can do it from the dashboard from CDP. And there are also 5 ICLEI initiatives, all of them in different areas. Also feel free to check them out. They cover different sectors like transport or energy. And again, they are optional. And, you know, in most of the cases, clicking on the option doesn't mean that you join the initiative. Okay. It just means you express interest in having more info on this initiative.
Okay, that's good. Good to know that this is a one place stop then to learn more about those as well, besides starting the disclosure process. And to come back a bit to the disclosure cycle and how cities can start, what do you think about the political support in the UBC cities or in the Baltic Sea region in general? Has there been has it been an issue or barrier to get the political support behind disclosure, or has it rather been the driving force that the politicians are saying that now we are going to do this and now, you know?
I don't know. I don't have much background info on that. I just want to say that the CDP reporting is really neutral politically, because we are a platform. You answer questions in different questionnaire, but you do not make any forms of commitment toward CDP. If you are a UBC member, you probably have some commitments to do. Maybe Christina, you can remind me them. And in that case, reporting through CDP is a way to report your progress against commitment. The Covenant of Mayor is also like a member-based associations asking cities to make pledges, commitments. But again, reporting to the CDP platform is only a way to do it. You don't take strong commitment in reporting to CDP. So there is no, political risk in starting disclosing to CDPs, just the way you do, the way you report to these initiatives. Just wanted to add that in the Baltic Sea areas, cities are usually at the forefront of climate action in general. We have seen some stats before, they are above the average, even above the European average, which means for them, they might think, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on reporting. Now it's really time to take action. And we are already behind that phase, which consisted in, having a diagnosis, doing some inventories, setting goals. Okay, you're right. In that case, I propose you to set ambitious goals and, for example, participate in this Race to Zero and Race to Resilience, so that you will get some more media exposure for your cities, and still report, but still report on your action, because we are still really, everyone is interested in knowing who is doing what and how do you solve your problem. Because if you do that, we will have, we will analyze your answers and we will see, oh, the city of, Vantaa is doing some great stuff to reduce the emissions of the airport. Can we share these findings with the rest of the cities? We have a cities network in a way at CDP, and we do that. So we publish case studies. If we identify that a city is taking innovative action to solve a very specific problem. So maybe that's where the UBC cities can now really take most benefit of CDP's reporting.
Exactly, to share the best practices and the know-how that is already existing in our region, and all the good things that are going on in the projects. And there are so many projects that are going on right now on those topics, like climate change, related on water, on the urban development, mobility, whatnot. So all of these things, I think they should be reported and disclosed to CDP, right? To kind of give the broader image of what is going on in the cities. And if you think about which departments in the cities, have you noticed that has there been a change from the environmental or strategic department to a more cross-departmental approach regarding the disclosure? Are cities utilizing the knowledge and information from other sources besides their own?
Yeah, I remember, I don't know if the city of Riga is in the call, but I remember the contact person there at the city of Riga last year told us that most of the data needed for the questionnaire was actually be beyond the scope of his own department and had to organize kind of project approach, teamwork approach in order to collect the data. Yes, indeed, the questionnaire covers not only climate or emission and adaptation, and very often adaptation and emission are really two different departments within the cities. But even within adaptation, you have drought and floods, which might be tackled by two different departments.
Exactly.
And then we also have waste, transport, energy, water security, to only name a few. So that means that, first reaction might be, where will I collect this data? Second reaction will be, where will I collect this data? who at the city is really in charge of this? And positive effect of that is that you, as a contact person, you might reach out to colleagues you have never reached out before and start working together on a very simple project, which is collecting data. And in doing that, you might also start thinking of common projects together with other departments, other colleagues. Yes,
of course. And that's the desirable outcome of this, that we kind of increase the collaboration in our own organizations as well, among the different departments, in order to get those holistic insights that are actually needed, that present the situation in our cities. So that is something that I think City of Riga did mention, and I would like to thank them for raising this up as well as a good example of how to do this, how to organize disclosure project in their own organization. I think that needs a celebration in its own right. But also I think that approach helps with the broader scale as well. If you think about the Sustainable Development Goals and the voluntary reviewing that some cities are already doing, the forerunners. Turku has done it, Helsinki has done it. There are more and more cities doing that every year, to reporting to the United Nations on their local activities and how they are connected to the SDGs. Do you think that this is an avenue that CDP can also explore in the future?
Very good point. Actually, currently our questionnaire does not have tags for SDGs. So you do not see, for this question 13.1, actually it's addressed the SDG X, Y, or Z. It's a miss, I recognize, but we have started working on it, and we have already made this map for us. So it's not accessible on the questionnaire, but if you ask me, I can give you a map where you will see, when you answer to a question, actually which SDGs you are really addressing. I can provide this document to anyone interested in that. Anyone who has a city climate action plan or a city sustainable action plan based on the SDGs or related to SDGs, we are happy to provide that.
All right, and I think the CDP disclosure can also work as a tool for kind of, how do you say, processing all these data to do that kind of SDG work as well, to have that overview. I think that they can be integrated also in that way into the same process, because they have initially the same goal, I think.
Actually, there are multiple questions addressing the SDGs. It's not tagged, like I said, but you can use your response as a report in order to then address, monitor your indicators. Just an advice to cities on speaking of that, do not have you can use CDP's reporting and platform as your database where you store your data, but don't have it as an exclusive storage. I remember one of the UBC cities told me this year that they've lost the data they have populated last year because they haven't submitted. And if you don't submit, indeed, yes, indeed, you will not find your data the next year. So if you want to keep your data, you need to submit whatever the data is. You can even submit in private mode so that nobody really have access to it. Then it will be stored, and then you will find them again the following year. If you want to use CDP as a repository, you know, that's possible, but just check with us how to do that. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're kind of encouraging cities to also move forward from the activated phase, so they have to actually submit their responses, even though there hasn't been a change made, so to speak. So just to continue and just to ensure that the data stays there in the system. All right. But it has been a really, really nice conversation with you, Étienne, regarding the CDP reporting and the disclosure process for this year. And we are reaching the end of our conversation, and just 3 minutes left. And I think we would like to if you'd like to say a couple of words still, encouragement for the cities who are tackling maybe with the time burden regarding the COVID situation right now. I think we didn't see that last year. It didn't affect as much as it seems to be affecting this year, the COVID situation and all the online working and so forth.
Well, actually, it was affecting the disclosure last year, and
as well.
we thought it will less affect this year, but it seems to be a bit equal. Same trends, unfortunately. So yeah, still many cities work from home, do not have a phone line or the same phone line from their office, which means that they are a bit hard to contact for us. So that's not so easy. The other thing I wanted to say before, and as a conclusion, is that I really want to thank the 23 UBC cities that have participated last year, because it's a huge number in the total of European cities, 121, so a very good proportion. Want to encourage any new cities or cities that have not participated so far to start doing that. The email address, if you want to contact us, and the shortest email address possible for CDP is cities, so in plural, cities, @cdp.net. And doing that, you can ask any question, get your login access, and even reach out to me in that way.
Right, I have added this to the announcements, and I think we are out of time in a minute, but I would like to thank you still, Étienne, for doing this, having this conversation with me, and I will then add all the links, all those reports and all those other things that we were supposed to add to our member cities. So I'll make sure that we will post them with this recording afterwards as well, so that everybody can get the maximum benefit out of this session. But I would like to thank you on my behalf.
Well, and also a big thank you to UBC for being such a good partner on this this action, climate action, simply.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to continuing this collaboration and then encouraging our cities to be more active and report their achievements in the future as well, so that we can achieve those climate goals that have been set globally as well as the local ones as well. And thank you, and we'll continue all the good work.
You're welcome.
All right, so bye-bye, everyone. Bye.